If the Buffalo Bills are going to beat the Miami Dolphins on Sunday, they got to be ready to beat the blitz. Locked On Bills starts now.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino, author of the Herd Mentality Substack, co-host of the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast, co-host of the NFL First Read Podcast, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. I want to thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, I appreciate you all being here very, very much. Locked On Bills is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Well, folks, welcome in. It's time to get ready for the Buffalo Bills Week 10 opponent, the challenges they present, and what the Bills need to do to deal with them. So let's dive in. The Bills, they're on the road in Week 10 to face the Miami Dolphins. The game will be played on Sunday, November 9th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time at Hard Rock Stadium in Miami Gardens, Florida. You can watch the game on CBS. Andrew Catalan is on the play-by-play. Charles Davis and Jason McCourty are your game analysts. AJ Ross is the sideline reporter. This will be the 125th all-time meeting between the Bills and Dolphins. And this one's interesting because the Bills have the opportunity to tie up the all-time series. The Bills are currently 61, 62, and 1 all-time against Miami. And remember, the Dolphins owned the Bills early on from 1967 to 1986. Miami against Buffalo was 34-4-1, and that included a 20-game win streak from 1970 through 1979. With a win on Sunday, the Bills can even the all-time series. Now, the Bills have obviously had a lot of recent success against Miami, including winning the last 7 and 14 of the last 15. The Bills enter this game at 6-2. The Dolphins are 2-7. The Dolphins' 2 wins, they came against the Jets and the Falcons. Their 7 losses to the Colts, Patriots, Bills, Panthers, Chargers, Browns, and Ravens. The head coach of the Miami Dolphins is still Mike McDaniel. He's in his 4th season as Miami's head coach, and he has a record of 30 wins and 30 losses. Of course, they made the playoffs his first 2 seasons. Then they went 8-9 last year, and they're off to a 2-7 start in 2025. Now, while Mike McDaniel is still holding on to this job, the general manager, Chris Grier, mutually agreed to part ways with the team this past week following their Thursday night loss to the Baltimore Ravens. And so we've seen the Dolphins do something to hold somebody accountable for the team at this point, and I'm very curious to see how they respond, not to mention they do have a rest advantage. They played on Thursday while the Bills played on Sunday. The quarterback for the Miami Dolphins is Tua Tagovailoa. He's 27 years old, was a first-round pick, number 5 overall in 2020, out of Alabama. He's 6'1", 225 pounds. He has started 71 career games, and Miami is 40-31 in those starts. So far this year, he is not anywhere near where he typically is statistically. He's completing 68% of his passes, only 198 passing yards per game. Typically, Tua is 270 or so in terms of average passing yards per game. He's thrown 15 touchdown passes. He's also thrown 11 interceptions. Diving into his advanced metrics, his EPA per dropback is minus 0.07, which is 25th in the NFL. He's not throwing deep at all. 7.7% of his deep throws, 7.7% of his throws are deep. That's 28th in terms of frequency on those deep throws. He is 8 of 21 for 256 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Yards after catch, that's a big part of the equation. 55% of Tua's passing yards come after the catch. That's 5th highest in the NFL. He throws to his first read 65% of the time, which is 23rd in the NFL. Usually that's a lot higher for Tua, usually over 70%. His average time to throw is 2.41 seconds. That's number 1 in the NFL. So Tua, traditionally the fastest triggered quarterback in the NFL. That is continuing this year, although it's a little slower than usual. Last year he was at 2.21 average time to throw. Now he's at 2.41. His catchable ball rate is 76%. That's 19th in terms of accurate throws. His turnover-worthy throw rate is pretty high, 4.8%. That's the 3rd highest of any NFL starting quarterback. Drops, that's a 5.5% drop rate. That's 11th highest. He doesn't face a ton of pressure. 30% of his dropbacks, he's pressured. That's the 2nd lowest in the NFL. And obviously the quick triggered nature of Tua and this offense makes it a little bit difficult to get a lot of pressure on him. But when you do get pressure on him, he goes down. 21% of pressure turns into sacks. That's the 10th highest rate in the NFL. They do run a decent amount of play action, 25% play action rate. That's 18th in the NFL. And they run a ton of screens. Number 1 in screens in the NFL, 17% screen rate. So you better be ready to defend some screen passes in this football game. So that's Tua and Mike McDaniel. And coming up next, we're going to dive into the rest of this offense. We'll break it down, how they're doing, who the personnel is, and my keys for the Bills defense against Miami's offense. We'll do that here next, folks. Be sure to stick with me. If you're still overpaying for wireless, it's time to say yes to saying no. At Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. No contracts, no monthly bills, no overages, no hidden fees, no BS. I said yes to making the switch and getting premium wireless for just $15 a month. Mint makes it simple. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can even bring your own phone and keep your same number and contacts. I love that you are getting the same quality service you had before, but for a fraction of the price, and the setup is super easy. You keep your number, and then you're running in minutes. Ready to say yes to saying no? Well, make the switch at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. Upfront payments of $45 required, which is equivalent to $15 a month. Limited time new customer offer for the first 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. The NFL season is here, folks, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium, surrounded by fans, cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. Between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at checkout, it's frustrating. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Game Time is fast, it's easy, and it's backed by the Game Time guarantee. You're always going to get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included. So the price you see is the price you pay. The app makes everything simple, and I love this. You can see the exact view from your seat before purchasing, and honestly, it just makes everything faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way that I've purchased tickets. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. All right, folks, the offensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins is Frank Smith. He's 44 years old. It's his 4th season in Miami, but Mike McDaniel is the play caller for the Dolphins. Metrically, they're scoring 20 points per game so far this year. That's 26th in the NFL. They pass it 61%. They run it 39%. That's the 5th highest pass rate and the 28th highest run rate. And I think some of that might be more game script, but they are definitely a team that passes it a lot more than they throw it. Passes it a lot more than they run it. They're 26th in EPA per play on offense. They're 23rd in EPA per pass, 25th in EPA per run. They convert 39% of their third downs. That's 17th in the NFL. They score 58% of the time. They score a touchdown 58% of the time. they get in the red zone. That is also 17th. Let's talk about their personnel. At wide receiver, Tyreek Hill, he's out for the year. And so Jaylen Waddle is their number one wide receiver. Obviously a really dynamic player, speed for sure. Route running, can get vertical, good yards after catch player. I'm anticipating a heavy amount of targets for Jaylen Waddle in this game. Then they have Malik Washington, who slot receiver, yards after catch guy. He's a capable playmaker. He hasn't been super consistent in terms of yards after the catch so far this year, but that type of role is kind of what you envision from him when you watched him in college, and he's a young player that's getting his opportunity. And then Nick Achane is their other receiver, big-bodied guy. Think a traditional like fourth receiver that's got size, that blocks, can give you that above-the-rim game, but obviously, not a guy that's going to do everything, but he gives them a size element at the wide receiver position. At tight end, their starter is Jaylen Hill, and he's been injured lately. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to go. If not, you'll see even more Tanner Conner and Greg Dulcich, who are both really more receiving type tight ends. Conner's been around for a while for them, but Dulcich is a player who flashed early in his career with Denver, and then he's just battled hamstring injuries and hasn't been able to be healthy, but he's healthy right now, and he's a pretty interesting receiving threat that got some opportunities against Baltimore last week, and I'm sure he'll potentially be in line for more chances this week against Buffalo. Their running back is Achane, multifaceted playmaker, right? Speed. He's not a very big running back, but he's got a ton of speed, and they involve him heavily in the passing game. And so you can expect a lot of this offense to run through Achane. And then his backup, or their number two back, is Ollie Gordon, who's a draft pick this year out of Oklahoma State. He's a bigger back, right? Not a guy that is going to be confused as a bursty type runner, but he's physical between the tackles. He gives them something in pass protection, and he's a nice change of pace stylistically from what they have in Achane, who is lightning in a bottle, and then, Ollie Gordon's more of the thunder, right? The downhill between the tackles, battering ram. And so Achane far and away gets the most carries for this team, and then Ollie Gordon's been getting a few carries every week. When it comes to target distribution, Achane actually leads the team in targets with 60. Then it's Jaylen Waddle with 59, Malik Washington 41, Nick Achane has 18, Tanner Conner 15, Jaylen Hill 13. Tyreek Hill not part of the mix, and then also Darren Waller, who they got out of retirement, came back, played a couple games, made a couple plays. He's injured again. So some of those pieces that maybe Miami thought about having this year, they're not available. So this is really, from a playmaker's perspective, it's about Achane and the multifaceted speed skill set that he offers, and then Jaylen Waddle, who's obviously their best receiver. And then I'm sure they'll sprinkle in some Malik Washington and some of the ancillary pieces from there. Let's talk about this offensive line. Their left tackle is Patrick Paul, second-year player. They drafted him in the second round in 2024, and he looks like a good young left tackle, and he's come into his own. He was drafted to succeed Teron Armstead. I think he's doing a decent job. Their left guard is Jonah Savianaya, who has been a mess. A draft pick. They traded up for him in the second round. Big, physical, athletic offensive lineman, but he had been a right side player. He's playing on the left side for Miami, and he's really struggled this season, and they're letting him play through those struggles, I think, because they envision that left side being Patrick Paul and Jonah Savianaya, and so I think they're letting them kind of fail forward together, but there's been a lot of issues with Savianaya's consistency. Their center is Aaron Brewer, who's one of the most unique football players in the league. He's very small. He's not a big center, but this guy's really explosive. They run so much of their offense through him with his ability to pull and get out in space, whether that's on screens or in their run game. He is really good at getting to the second level and taking out linebackers and creating some run lanes for Achane. So you got to have a nice plan to deal with this center. And I think you got to be pretty intentional about trying to jam him up at the line. The Bills, going back to that week 3 game, they played a lot of two eyes, three techs. They didn't have a lot of guys over the center. I'd be willing to put a big body over him and try to limit his ability to get off the line and get to the second level, because he can create some real problems. I'm not sure he's going to work for a lot of schemes, but he works for this one, and he's a really good player. Their right guard is Cole Strange, and they've been through several right guards already this year. And Cole Strange was a first-round pick by the Patriots, had some injury issues, and then he's landed in Miami. He's starting at right guard, but he's really, really struggled. This pair of Strange and Savianai at guard is one of the lower-performing guard duos in the NFL. Now, I'm not sure what defensive tackle talent the Bills will have to really take advantage of it, but those are some players that have really struggled this year. The right tackle is Larry Borum. They'd like it to be Austin Jackson, right? That's their paid right tackle. He's injured once again. And Larry Borum, who they signed in free agency to provide some depth, is now starting at right tackle. So I like what they have in center and Aaron Brewer. I think they got a good-looking young left tackle in Patrick Paul, but really shaky at the other three spots. So some potential opportunities there for the Bills to win some one-on-one matchups. So what are my keys for the Bills on defense against this Miami Dolphins offense? Number one is do not sleep on their appetite to run the football. I know that this is a team that skews towards throwing the ball, but when I think about some factors for this game, first of all, the Bills' defensive tackle situation, where I don't know if they're going to have DaQuan Jones or not. They certainly won't have Ed Oliver. You're going to see a lot of snaps for Jordan Phillips, for Fedarian Mathis, who is now on the active roster, for Deion Walker, potentially a practice squad call-up if DaQuan Jones can't go. And I would want to run the ball against those players, especially with the Bills linebackers and how they play against the run. And they've been working in this sixth offensive lineman, and this is not something they've ever done under Mike McDaniel. And so Daniel Brunskill has now played the jumbo package. Think about Alec Anderson and what he was for the Bills. They're not leaning into this with Daniel Brunskill playing as the jumbo tight end. They've used it 24 times over the last 2 games. And I'm sure that they're wanting to build off of that because it's produced some success for them. And, they like to put 2 backs on the field. They have a fullback in Alec Ingold that they like to utilize. And then their other tight ends that are available to them are really not blockers. And so they've kind of done this to overcome, but it's also produced something for them. And so I think you're going to see plenty of Daniel Brunskill and Alec Ingold to try to get some bigger bodies on the field to create space for Devon Achane. So that wrinkle plus the Bills' defensive tackles, and then also the game script. Like, this game needs to go a certain way for Miami. It's clock control, limiting possessions, running the ball. And Mike McDaniel, I think, has really struggled to manifest that. But if he's going to have a chance, I think that's going to be his ticket. And so I think you got to be ready for them to run the football. They're a team that can creatively run the ball with motions. And boy, Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano are really struggling to read right now, playing through motion. Look at the Kansas City game. You're supposed to read through the guards, and their eyes were all over the motion, pulling them right out of run fits. And so I'm sure they watched that tape. Miami did, and maybe see some opportunities to run the football against Buffalo. And I expect them to unleash a lot of that, not to mention they've had extra time to prepare. So I know Miami likes to throw it, but do not sleep on their appetite to run the football. Number 2 is you got to get Tua out of rhythm. That's always going to be something I say when talking about Miami. Tua is a very limited player, but he is accurate and he can get the ball out quick. And when he is feeling your coverage rotations and understanding where his guys are going to be, and he gets the ball out quick with that smooth motion, really catchable ball on time, it's accurate, that can be a problem. Well, the problem for Tua is when that's not the case and he has to move his eyes, move off of his spot, work deeper into progressions, that's where the wheels fall off. And so the Bills have traditionally done a very good job of kind of capping those initial reads and forcing him to work deeper into the snap. And you got to find your way to get that done here on Sunday afternoon. And then lastly, and I'm pretty excited for this, it's the matchup between Maxwell Hairston and Jaylen Waddle. Maxwell Hairston, when the Bills drafted him, these are the moments they had to been thinking about. Xavier Worthy, which he aced the test last week. Think about guys like Zay Flowers, Garrett Wilson, Jaylen Waddle. And this is the type of player that you like having Maxwell Hairston to go up against. And, I think highly of Jaylen Waddle. He's a good player. But the Bills finally have a guy for the first time, I think, yet playing Miami, where it's like, wow, the Bills have a corner that can match steps with him. And I think that's a matchup that the Bills have to lean into. We'll see if Christian Benford's available to play. It doesn't sound like he's practiced Wednesday or Thursday, had a groin injury. We'll learn more about that on Friday, but I think there's a good chance that you don't have Christian Benford in this game, which is going to put Maxwell Hairston into a pretty big role. And certainly getting him to line up across from Jaylen Waddle is a big part of Buffalo's recipe defensively on Sunday. So don't sleep on their appetite to run the ball, get Tua out of rhythm, and you got to win that matchup of Jaylen Waddle against Maxwell Hairston. And ultimately knowing that this is an offense, it's about two players. It's about Jaylen Waddle, it's about Achane. And those are the guys to key in on. This isn't everybody eats and there's, 7 different guys that are really potent. They have other guys, but it's really Waddle and Achane. Those are the guys that can hurt you. Those are the players you got to be ready to defend. All right, coming up next, the Bills offense against this defense. They're going to blitz, folks. I've got some exciting numbers to share with you here on the other side of it. So, folks, be sure to stick with me. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season, whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both. There's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, Prize Picks is the simplest way to play. You just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere that Prize Picks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. I've been using Prize Picks both during football Sundays and NBA tip-offs. It just keeps every game exciting. Plus, if one of your players leaves early with an injury, the injury reboots feature, it's going to save your lineup from a loss. So download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. Welcome back, folks. Would encourage you to check out thejoemarino.com. I have a lot of things going on outside of this podcast. I do 2 other podcasts. I also have a Substack where I provide additional written and film content. I have a text club where I send you Bills news and in-game texts, and you also get some film clips there as well. And we have a merchandise shop where we have shirts like this one, the Everybody Eats shirt. Check it out, thejoemarino.com. You can get more connected with everything that's going on around this podcast, and I'd love for you to become part of the community. Our Discord community is really cool. We did it. We topped 2,000 people in there, and it is so fun. We're talking Bills all day, polls, questions, sharing ideas, sharing film clips. We go live every Wednesday. We do a herd hangout on Wednesday nights, and Jerry Ostrowski joins me. We break down film clips. It's unbelievable. Jerry Ostrowski breaking down film, and we also take questions and have a lot of fun on Wednesday nights. So be part of it. Don't miss out. Go to thejoemarino.com to learn more. There's a link in today's show notes. The defensive coordinator for the Miami Dolphins is Anthony Weaver. He's 45 years old. It's his second year as Miami's defensive coordinator. Prior to that, he was 3 years as the Ravens defensive line coach, and then he was the Texans defensive coordinator in 2020 after 4 years as their defensive line coach. Metrically, so far this year, they're allowing 27 points per game. That's 25th. They're 29th in EPA per play, 29th in EPA per pass, 23rd in EPA per rush. They're 43% on third down. That's 25th in third down rate defensively. Their red zone defense is actually pretty decent, 56%. That's 10th best in the NFL. They don't run a lot of man coverage, 26% man coverage. That's actually middle of the pack. And then they blitz a lot. 34% is their blitz rate, which is 5th highest in the NFL. Keeping in mind, they blitzed Josh Allen in week 3 47% of the time. We'll talk about those splits here in just a moment. Their personnel at defensive tackle, Zach Sealer is the big ticket player. He's been really good. He's a guy that can defend the run. He can rush the passer. He sets picks and gets other guys free. He's a good football player. I don't think he's having his best year, but I think that's probably more of a product of what's around him than anything that's wrong with Zach Sealer. Then they play 2 rookies next to him. Kenneth Grant, their first-round pick out of Michigan, who I think over the last 4 weeks, about the last month or so, has really started to find himself. And then Jordan Phillips, not our Jordan Phillips, the new Jordan Phillips. This one's from Maryland, the draft pick that they made this year. He's another young defensive tackle that I think started rough. The last month or so, you can see that it's starting to click for those young defensive tackles. And then Matthew Butler is 290 pounds, will spell Zach Sealer, gives them some athleticism as well. So Sealer, Grant, Phillips, your down linemen. When it comes to their edge rushers, of course, they traded away Jalen Phillips. We'll see if they have Chop Robinson. He's been working back from a concussion, and it's kind of up in the air, it feels like, if he's going to go on Sunday. Now, they should have Bradley Chubb, who they weren't able to trade at the deadline. Obviously, I don't think he's vintage Bradley Chubb. He's, a couple of big injuries in a row, and we'll see what he can offer. And then Matthew Judon, who's a, aging veteran edge rusher that is probably going to have to play a lot more now that Jalen Phillips is gone. And certainly if Chop Robinson isn't available, they're probably going to have to get down to like Cameron Good, who has been on their team for a while, hasn't played much, 230 pounds, athleticism, but hasn't carved out much of a role. But, they're pretty depleted on the edge with Jalen Phillips no longer in this equation, but also if they don't have Chop Robinson, that'd be a notable loss. At linebacker, they have Jordan Brooks. I think he's one of the best linebackers in the league, a coverage player, fast, explosive, good downhill tackler as well. Very, very outstanding middle linebacker. And then his running mate is somebody you know well, Tyrell Dotson, who thrives playing downhill, not so much a guy that thrives in space and in coverage. At corner, boy, I'm not exactly sure how this is going to sort out. Rasul Douglas is one of their starting corners. I don't know if he's going to be able to go. I don't think he practiced Wednesday or Thursday. If he can't play, it would probably be Ethan Bonner. And, that's not a player with a ton of reps in the NFL. Been a depth player for a while, low pedigree type guy. And then Jack Jones is their other corner, who they signed just before the start of the season. I think he's probably a sufficient level starter, maybe ideally more of a depth player, but he's at least a decent player. But they could be down Rasul Douglas, which would put Ethan Bonner in the lineup, and that would be a notable downgrade because Rasul's actually having a very good year. In the slot, I think it's going to be Minkah Fitzpatrick. They've been dealing with injuries in their secondary with Ife and Melifonwu. That has put Minkah Fitzpatrick more in the slot. And against the Bills, it probably makes a lot of sense for him to play there, or they can get him matched up with Kincaid or Shakir, because otherwise they have rookies that they'd be playing, like Jason Marshall is a fifth round rookie out of Florida. Do you want him in there against Kincaid and or Shakir? Probably not. So even if Ife Melifonwu is healthy, I can see Minkah Fitzpatrick, being that slot player. And then when it comes to deep safeties, maybe Ife Melifonwu, Ashton Davis, who's been more of a journeyman backup, special teamer, and then Dante Trader, a fifth round rookie out of Maryland. So, boy, they got some stuff to figure out on defense, and some not ideal starting players that are going to have to play a lot, it would appear. So one of my keys for the Bills on offense against this defense is you got to be ready to beat the blitz. You got to be ready. We talked about it. This is a top 5 team in the league in terms of blitz rate. And going back to the week 3 matchup, when Miami blitzed, which they did 47% of the time, that's a ton. Josh Allen was 8 of 14 for 53 yards and a touchdown. When they didn't blitz, Josh Allen was 14 of 14 for 160 yards and 2 touchdowns. They're going to blitz. They're going to blitz like crazy. And the EPA splits for Josh Allen this year, when blitzed, when not blitzed, are very, very different. And I think there's a big conversation to have there about Josh Allen's comfort in the pocket and how a player like Keon Coleman, playing as much as he does, and the lack of respect that defenses have for him, puts more attention on Josh Allen. So he's not quite as good this year when it comes to pressure. But ultimately, Miami's going to blitz. They're absolutely going to blitz. And keep in mind, they had extra time to prepare for this game. And we saw what a blitz-aggressive defense in Atlanta did with extra time against Josh Allen, a coordinator there in Jeff Olbrich, who's familiar with playing against the Bills and Josh Allen. Well, that's the same thing with Weaver and the Dolphins and their extended time. So you got to be ready for some unique blitz wrinkles in this football game because they're going to send it. They're absolutely going to send it. They don't have anything to lose. They don't have the talent on the back end to hold up. They're going to blitz. Number 2 is you need to invite them to play the game that they don't want to play. And the secret to, I don't know if it's a secret, it's pretty obvious. When you play Miami, if you can start fast and control the game script, that's really where they struggle. When you force Miami into a drop back passing game, they really don't have much, right? That's where the limitations of Tua shows up. That's where their offensive line talent issues show up. So you got to aggressively chase points early and do everything you can to get Miami into that game script that they don't want to play and invite them to a track meet. See if they want to show up to a track meet. I don't think they do. I think they want to show up to a game where both teams have the ball 8 times, and that's it. Well, don't give that to them. Aggressively chase those points, get them into a drop-back passing game. And I think number 3 ties into that. You got to finish drives. Miami, top 10 red zone defense this year. The Bills are 9th in red zone offense, or a pretty good red zone offense team. But in games like this where you're heavy favorites, right, on the road, division game, possessions that could be 6 points for the Bills that end up in 3, those are wins for Miami. That keeps them in the game. Don't do that. You got to finish. And Miami has shown to be a decent bend, don't break defense with their top 10 red zone defense. So punch it in, get those points. Don't leave points on the board. You got to finish drives, because that's how you keep Miami in the game. And you can't do that. Don't keep them in the game. Real quick on special teams, Riley Patterson's their kicker, and Jason Sanders is their paid kicker. He's on injured reserve, kind of like the Bills with Tyler Bass. And Riley Patterson's come in and done a nice job. He's 26 years old. He's 19 of 19 on extra points. He's 13 of 15 on field goals so far this year. Now, he's bounced around a ton. He's 28. He's been on 6 teams since 2021, but he's getting the job done for Miami. And for his career, he's an 86% kicker, which is pretty decent for a guy that can't find a home. Their punter is Jake Bailey. It's his 3rd season on the job in Miami. Prior to that, he was 4 years as the Patriots punter. He's been one of the best punters in the league this year. His EPA numbers are top 3 in the NFL. And then when it comes to the returner situation, it's going to be Malik Washington, the slot receiver we talked about that's very good with yards after catch. So far as a punt returner, he's been really good this year. 12 punt returns, an average of 16 yards, including a 74-yard touchdown. That's one of the most spectacular punt returns you'll ever see. So hopefully the Bills aren't punting too much, but if they do, watch out for Malik Washington, because he's a good punt returner. And you think about the margins and where Miami can maybe steal something, maybe a big play on special teams. And so you got to have your guard up in a game like this where, penalties, giveaways, special teams, these are the types of things that they're looking for an edge in the margins, because from scrimmage, I don't think they match up well. So how do you find an edge, right? It's some of that stuff. And be careful. Don't let those things keep Miami in the game. All right, folks, there you have it. My primer for Bills-Dolphins. And we'll have another conversation. We'll do final thoughts. We'll talk to Dr. Kyle Trimble of Banged Up Bills. We'll give you my predictions. And look, injuries are something this week. James Cook with an ankle, Joey Bosa with a wrist, Christian Benford with a groin, players that are working back. AJ Epinesa has a concussion. So we'll see where that all is on Friday. We'll talk to Dr. Kyle Trimble of Banged Up Bills about it and try to figure out what this team's going to look like, what players are available, which ones aren't. Do they get DaQuan Jones back? Do they get Shaq Thompson back? Do they get Josh Palmer? It's a lot of injury stuff to be mindful of with this game. So we'll certainly consider all of that in our final conversation, which will drop on Saturday morning. All right, folks, thanks for being here. As always, I kindly ask that you share, subscribe, rate, and review. Have a great rest of your day. Go Bills! And I look forward to catching up with you again real soon.